you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. The trash management crisis returns back to the spotlight after a deal to transport garbage stops due to the closure of the Burj Hammoud storage location. The Chief of General Security, Abbas Ibrahim, looks for a serious mediator for the hostages taken in Absail. And the first group of rebels, as well as their families, are evacuated from the Syrian town of Daraya after 4 years of government siege. The waste management file has returned to the spotlight after a deal to transport waste from the streets of Metin, Kisirwen, and parts of the capital of Beirut went to a halt due to the closure of the Burj Hammoud storage location. Trash is accumulating once again on the streets of Metin, Kisirwen, and a small section of Beirut that are included in the trash deal to transport garbage to a temporary site in Burj Hammoud. The Tashnak Party and the municipality of Burj Hammoud have decided to close the location until the completion of the project set to implement a landfill in Burj Hammoud. The location has been closed for 3 days now without any clear solution in the horizon. Lebanon's unprecedented waste management crisis erupted in July of 2015 after the closure of the central Nami landfill, which was receiving the waste of Beirut and Mount Lebanon. The Chief of General Security, Abbas Ibrahim, says Lebanon is looking for a serious mediator who can help the government secure the release of 9 servicemen still being held hostage by ISIS. Ibrahim said that he would do everything in his power to resolve the situation. Addressing security conditions in Lebanon, Ibrahim said that the situation was under control and better than the circumstances in some other countries, a result of security forces' efforts to preserve stability. Ibrahim said international security forces are providing information to the Lebanese security services, but added that there are mutual cooperation and that Lebanon in turn is providing information to other nations on matters related to their security. Ibrahim said he underscored the situation in the Palestinian refugee camps and praised the role the Palestinian factions have played in this regard. A first group of rebels and their families evacuated from the Syrian town of Daraya after 4 years of government siege have reached opposition-held territory. At least 5 buses carrying fighters and their families arrived in the rebel-held city of Idlib in the northwest, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The arrivals are the first since the evacuation of the town just outside of Damascus began on Friday under an agreement between the government and the rebels. Daraya has been ravaged by constant bombardment by the army and the long years of siege that saw just a single food aid convoy reach the town since late 2012. Civilian residents of the town, believed to number around 8,000, are also currently being evacuated. The United States and Russia have failed to reach a breakthrough deal for a 48-hour humanitarian truce in Aleppo or wider military cooperation against Daesh in Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, addressing a joint news conference after day-long talks in Geneva, said their respective experts would continue to hash out details in coming days in the Swiss city. The U.S. Foreign Secretary told reporters that Nusra's recent efforts to distance themselves from al-Qaeda would not change the way the group is viewed by Washington. Both Kerry and Lavrov said there were a few issues that needed to be fleshed out after Friday's talks before an agreement could be reached, and warned that it could collapse unless a period of calm was established before the deal can be implemented.
We have completed the...
An AFP correspondent said earlier this morning that Turkey sent 6 more tanks into Syria as pro-Ankara forces press on with demining work in a town captured from Daesh this week. The photographer in the village of Karkamis on the Turkish side of the border watched 6 Turkish tanks roll over the frontier into Syria. The Turkish troops are supporting an even larger force of hundreds of Syrian rebels. The photographer said that sporadic explosions were audible on the Turkish side of the border as the rebels carry out demining work in the town of Jarablus, seized from Daesh on Wednesday. The state-run Anadolu news agency confirmed in a story deadline from Jarablus that the rebels are working to destroy explosives left behind by Daesh. The new unity government of Youssef Chahed won resounding support from Parliament, approving a new cabinet lineup which must tackle the country's pressing socio-economic and security challenges. After a long day of debate, the country's legislature overwhelmingly approved Shahid's lineup with 167 votes in favor, 22 against, and 5 abstentions. At 40, Shahid will become the country's youngest prime minister since it won independence from France in 1956. In a rousing speech ahead of the vote, Shahid stressed the necessity of his proposed unity government to address mounting economic challenges not resolved since the 2011 revolution. Shahid, whose speech was met with resounding applause, said his government would give priority to fighting corruption and terrorism. Coming up next, more world headlines. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the 1620 o'clock news here on Future Television. Holiday makers in Corsica reacted to a top French court suspending a ban on full-body burkini swimsuits in a debate that has angered Muslims, feminists, and civil liberty campaigners. The ruling by the Council of State relates to the Mediterranean resort of Villeneuve-Loubet, one of more than a dozen French towns that have imposed such bans. But one mayor on the island said he would not suspend his own ban, showing that the ruling will not put a quick end to the heated controversy that has already filtered into early campaigning for the 2017 presidential elections. The court said in a statement the decree to ban burkinis in Villeneuve-Loubet seriously and clearly illegally breached the fundamental freedoms to come and go, the freedom of beliefs, and individual freedoms. Former president and presidential hopeful Nicolas Sarkozy announced at a campaign launch meeting on Thursday that he would ban the burkini if he gets at the helm of France next year. Bangladesh security forces killed 4 militants earlier today, including the alleged mastermind of an attack on a cafe in Dhaka last month in which 22 people, mostly foreigners, were killed. Additional Commissioner of Police Munirul Islam said that the militants were cornered in an early morning raid on their hideout on the outskirts of the capital and were killed after refusing to surrender. Bangladesh-born Canadian citizen Tamim Ahmad Chowdhury, the alleged mastermind of the attack on the cafe, was among those killed. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the cafe attack, and while the government has dismissed the claim, security experts say the scale and sophistication of the assault suggests links to transnational networks. U.S. Republican candidate Donald Trump met with Hispanic supporters in Las Vegas to discuss a push to win the battleground state of Nevada. Latino supporters and local Republican leaders met with Trump at his hotel in Las Vegas as the Trump campaign tries to court Hispanic and African-American voters. Trump has tried recently to broaden his appeal to them, hinting at a softening of his hardline position on immigration. But a Reuters Ipsos States of the national poll for the week beginning August 15 found Clinton beating Trump among Hispanics voters by 15 percentage points and by 57 percentage points among black voters. Trump has been criticized for his proposals on immigration, which include deporting millions of undocumented foreigners, building a wall along the Mexican border, and suspending Muslim immigration to shore up national security. He even went as far as to describe Mexican immigrants as criminals and rapists in a 2015 speech. U.S. President Barack Obama is urging Congress to take action against Zika as more cases of the mosquito-borne virus are reported from parts of Florida. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration recommends that all blood donated in the United States and its territories be tested for the Zika virus as it moves to prevent transmission of the virus through the blood supply.
Here I got a letter from a South Carolina woman named Ashley, who was expecting her 3rd child. She was, in her words, extremely concerned about the Zika virus and what it might mean for other pregnant women like her. I understand that concern. As a father, Ashley's letter has stuck with me, and it's why we've been so focused on the threat of the Zika virus. So today I just want to take a few minutes to let you know what we've been doing in response and to talk about what more we can all do. Since late last year, when the most recent outbreak of Zika started popping up in other countries, federal agencies like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention have been preparing for it to arrive in the U.S. In February, more than 6 months ago, I asked Congress for the emergency resources that public health experts say we need to combat Zika. That includes things like mosquito control, tracking the spread of the virus, accelerating new diagnostic tests and vaccines, and monitoring women and babies with the virus. Republicans in Congress did not share Ashley's extreme concern, nor that of other Americans expecting children. They said no. Instead, we were forced to use resources we need to keep fighting Ebola, cancer, and other diseases. We took that step because we have a responsibility to protect the American people, but that's not a sustainable solution. And Congress has been on a 7-week recess without doing anything to protect Americans from the Zika virus. So my administration's done what we can on our own. Our primary focus has been protecting pregnant women and families planning to have children. For months now, the CDC has been working closely with officials in Florida and other states. NIH and other agencies have moved aggressively to develop a vaccine. And we're working with the private sector to develop more options to test for and prevent infection. For weeks, the CDC emergency response team has been on the ground in South Florida, working alongside the excellent public health officials there. Folks who have a strong track record of responding aggressively to the mosquitoes that carry viruses like Zika. They know what they're doing. Still, there's a lot more everybody can and should do, and that begins with some basic facts. Zika spreads mainly through the bite of a certain mosquito. Most infected people don't show any symptoms, but the disease can cause brain defects and other serious problems when pregnant women become infected.
North Korea is threatening to aim fire at the lighting equipment used by American and South Korean troops at a truce village inside the demilitarized zone that divides the two Koreas. In a statement, the North Korean People's Army accused U.S. and South Korean soldiers of deliberate provocations by aiming their lights at North Korean guard posts since Friday evening. The statement comes hours after the United Nations Security Council issued a statement strongly condemning 4 North Korean ballistic missile launches in July and in August. Japan is pledging to African leaders an investment of $30 billion made up of infrastructure, financing, and human resource development to 10 million people over the next 3 years beginning 2016. Resource-poor Japan has long been interested in tapping Africa's vast natural resources, even more so since dependence on oil and natural gas imports jumped after the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster shut almost all of Japan's nuclear reactors. When combined with the private sector, I expect the total will amount to $30 billion. This is an investment that has faith in Africa's future, an investment for both Japan and Africa to grow together. These are the words of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He announced the package during the opening of the 6th Tokyo International Conference on African Development in the Kenyan capital of Nairobi. Abe, who has been engaged in aggressive diplomacy since he took office in December of 2012, also called for Africa's inclusion in the United Nations Security Council. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Waste management file returns back the spotlight after a deal to transport waste stops due to the closure of the Burj Hammoud storage location. The Chief of General Security, Abbas Ibrahim, looks for a serious mediator for hostages taken in Azad. The first group of rebels and their families evacuated from the Syrian town of Daraya after 4 years of government siege. Those are your Saturday headlines live on Future Television. Have a nice weekend, everybody.